All right, I hear an opening. I hear it quiet, I'm stepping in. I am Rachel Armstrong, and this is a session on employment law. You are all wonderful people for being here. I mean, who thinks this is fun? Who's like, I am so going to the session on employment law, it's gonna be awesome. Nobody does. Well, I guess one person does. Very special person in the front. So for the most of you, you're like, ugh, I guess I should know this. You're right, you should know this. And kudos to you for taking that difficult step of learning this stuff. Don't worry, it will not be as horrible as you think it will be. And not only that, it is absolutely essential to your success as a farm operator. You know, you might think I'm here to tell you, you gotta follow all these rules and you gotta do it now. Sure, follow all these rules, do it now, yeah, And also, if farming is about one thing, it's about risk. It's about managing risk. It is about diligent, careful decision-making. That's what you're here to learn. You're here to learn how to make decisions for yourself about what is right for your farm operation. And I'm here to teach you how to do that. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to talk to you about rules, consequences, and help you make decisions for yourself. So don't worry, this isn't a session where I'm just going to yap at you about all the rules. I'm the odd type of attorney that does not like rules. So that's what you can expect going forward. However, science tells me that we are unmotivated by the potential for good things. The promise of good things actually doesn't influence our behavior. The threat of terrible things is actually what motivates us mere humans. So I would be negligent if I did not try to scare you. So here goes. Employment law enforcement actions happen. They happen to small farms, they happen to big farms, they happen to vegetable farms, produce operations, livestock. They happen everywhere. They happen in Vermont, in California, they happen in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and your peers are not telling you about it. If we get an enforcement action against us, we don't really put it on social media. We do not talk about the fines. We don't talk about the lawsuit someone threatened. That's not fun. Those are not successes. Those are scary, awful things. So just because you don't hear about it doesn't mean it's not happening. It absolutely does happen. And what it means is it means tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it means a bill that you are going to be paying off for the rest of the farm business's life. So you don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want the damage to your reputation and your community relationships and the stress and staying up at night that happens with these things. So you know what that risk means to you, and you can dwell on how you want to manage the risks of bad things happening to your farm. So now that we've got that out of the way, this content matters. You have choices and opportunity to manage these risks, and choosing to do that can save you a lot of money. I'll focus today on where the risk especially lies. And if you are being, you only have limited time and limited energy in your body to deal with this. So we'll help you figure out where should I really focus my efforts when I'm thinking about managing bad things. That's what's called building resilience in employment law. A little bit about me. So technically, officially in my business life, I am the executive director of Farm Commons. Farm Commons is a nonprofit 501c3 organization headquartered out of Duluth, which is where I live and where I grew up. So this is one of those amazing opportunities where I get to drive a mere hour to do my work. Farm Commons is a national organization. We serve farmers and ranchers all around the country in terms of business law education. Employment law is one of our specialties, but we also spend a lot of time helping farmers understand business structures, insurance, food safety, all manner, liability, trips and falls, all the business law stuffs. We got it. We have 5 staff around the country. We serve farmers remote and in person. Pandemic times, all that in-person stuff kind of died, and we've put a lot of it online. We're also a member organization, and membership is what makes it possible for us to create the materials that matter to you. So to access our materials, consider joining. As a member of Farm Commons, you get 100+ different guides and resources and templates. You get a question and answer platform to ask your unique questions, and access to our online workshops that you can take anytime very soon. So that's my professional life. Up in Duluth, that's where I grew up. I grew up on my family's old dairy farm outside of town that my dad was born on. It's not a farm anymore, as so often happens, and there's not much of a dairy industry outside of Duluth anymore. Happy to be there with my 3 kids. I have 4-year-old twins and a 5-year-old, so we keep extremely busy, one could say. So that's me, and that's what brings me here. It's my farming background. It's everything that I've done in my life that has brought me to form Farm Commons. In everything that I had done before going to law school, I worked for farms. I was, a farm hand for several different operations. I managed a farm-to-restaurant program. If you know Fair Share CSA Coalition, worked with them, was on the board, did a bunch of stuff, and kept thinking, hey, where do we go for our legal questions? Because I've got them, and I don't have answers. So that's what inspired me to go to law school and figure this out. So here we are today. Now, you are the reason that I'm here, and I'm here to answer your questions and help you make decisions for yourself. I can talk a lot, but don't take all the words coming out of my mouth to mean I don't want to hear from you. Raise those hands, jump in, get in there. What you have on your mind is what's important today. And even if you don't have a question, sometimes a story is really needed too. All right, so that's me and who I am. When I do presentations, I like to begin with action steps. Yes, the whys and the hows and the background and all that stuff is important, but you want to know, where are we headed? What am I supposed to do? So I'm going to start with what you need to do. Action step number 1 to build resilience around employment law. Get workers' compensation, or at least injury liability coverage, to make sure the workers on your farm are covered in case of injury. In my opinion, this is the single most important step that any producer can take to manage the risks that are the greatest, that are the most likely to happen, and the most devastating if they occur. Get coverage for injuries. Primarily, get workers' comp. Number 2, work on a business plan that accounts for your employment law obligations. And if you want to align your workers to an alternative classification, such as interns, worker shares, volunteers, apprentices, you have to do some work. It is not easy to align anyone who does work on your farm to one of these alternative classifications, and you've got to understand that. If you don't want to do that work, modify your business plan to meet all your employment law obligations, which may include minimum wage, overtime, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and more. That's where we're headed. That's what I'm going to tell you about today. That really captures what do we have to do at the end of the day to manage our risks. There are choices for you that are tied up in these. Do you want the workers' comp, or do you want liability insurance? And are you required to do one or the other? You've got choices in here. Do you want to do some research? Do you want to rejigger your programs to meet these definitions, or do you just want to go employee? You've got options, but these are the primary things you need to think about. Today, we are going to be walking through how to classify your workers. Are they independent contractors? Are they interns? Are they volunteers? Probably not. They're probably employees. And in that case, you've got to follow your employment law obligations. We'll cover minimum wage, overtime, workers' comp, and if we've got some free time and you have interest, we can also freelance into all the other realms like discrimination and payroll tax and that good stuff. Okay, is there any questions that are burning in your mind today and you're wondering, gosh, Is she going to talk about, let's hear them. Yeah.
Hoping we can talk about, so we have the farm insurance, which covers the buildings, catastrophic losses, and of course, under the standard policy is liability coverage.
Sure.
And hopefully, we'll talk about that liability coverage, would that cover an event if one of my employees have their farm on?
Excellent, excellent question. The short answer is no, it won't, but we'll get to it. We'll get to all the details. Great question. Yeah.
I'll just kind of briefly describe our scenario too. So we have a farm business that we're looking to hire employees for. Absolutely farm work,
Yep.
harvesting vegetables. But we're looking to have like a value added component with like a commercial kitchen.
Right.
It's almost like a different business.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's some way that those things would interact or make decisions.
Perfect. We will absolutely explore that. Quick answer is, it's not almost a different business. It is. And there are different employment laws that apply. Key thing we'll be talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Wondering if you'll address alternative compensation,
Awesome. Okay, the question was, what about alternative compensation? In-kind, housing, food. It wasn't actually a part of our presentation, but it's something I know very well. We have a whole guide on it. Legally, it's called in-kind compensation. So if you remind me at the end, I will give you the rundown on that.
Are you familiar with any like H2A?
H2A, right. Yeah, only the basics. H2A is complicated. There's a lot of paperwork. You're best off working with somebody who has done it many times before. Farm Commons does not actually provide legal services. If you would like an attorney, you can't come to us. Part of the reason for that is, number one, it's not efficient. We exist to help farmers reduce risk, and helping as many people as possible means education. But the number two thing is, I don't want you to think I am up here teaching you this so that you'll hire me. I'm not, and you can't do that. You can't hire me. I'm here because I care about what you're doing, and I'm here to help you be resilient. And that's a part of how I can build trust with my audience, is by saying, I don't even, you can't even pay me. H2A is one of those areas where you really do need focused help to get into the program. And then beyond that, an attorney can't help you actually find the workers, so you got to have the networks in your community to be able to pull on the actual pools of workers.
You would need a lawyer.
A lawyer, not necessarily, but those are the people that are often the most skilled to do it. There's nothing that, to complete the paperwork, there's nothing that says you have to be a lawyer. It's just, who else is going to give you that time? Because you'll pay them handsomely for it. Yeah. Yeah, right there. Sure, incubator programs, yes, definitely. We'll cover that when we go through intern and volunteer type classifications. If I haven't addressed all of your questions there, definitely raise those at the end. And back there.
Are you going to talk about maybe like a financial threshold where you go from independent contractor hiring help to like an actual employee?
Yes, we will. Yeah, that's a great one. That'll come up in the second half a little bit after we get past the classifications. Good stuff, man. I love an audience where I have come prepared and am mostly going to deal with all your questions. All right. The first thing I need you to know, I like to be super efficient, get it all out there right away. Here's what you need to know. Almost everyone who does work on a farm is an employee. This means if you have somebody on your farm who you think is not an employee and you don't have to follow the regular old rules, you're probably wrong. Probably an employee. So the law on this is actually really clear. You're going to think about this in terms of having two basic options for your workers. You have an employee or an independent contractor. Those are your two predominant legitimate options, employee or independent contractor. So let's start with that distinction between those two. An independent contractor generally speaking, does the following: brings their own tools and sets their own schedule, controls how a task is accomplished. This means to the extent that the employer, the farm business owner, doesn't have a right to give specific instructions. It is that person's realm of authority to figure out how they will do the job. This person earns a profit or suffers a loss based on project revenue minus expenses. They run a small business. They run their own small business, basically. And you hire them, and generally you pay a flat fee. The flat fee, they reap profit on that based on how efficient they are in their work, just as you are in your farm. And number 4, they provide the same services to others. Now, is this a test where you have to meet every element? Maybe, maybe not. It depends. What we have to ask next is, who's asking? Is this the IRS that's asking at the federal level? Is this the state unemployment insurance division that's, oh wait, is this the state workers' comp division that's asking? Because everybody's got a slightly different answer for exactly what they want to see to call this person an independent contractor. I've generalized these criteria for you, and so what you need to walk away thinking is if you're not hitting every one of these points, you're operating in an area of risk. Is risk bad? It's bad if you don't like risk. So if you don't mind risk, you just need to know that you're operating in that, and that the person you think is an independent contractor might not actually be. How does that come up to bite you in the butt? When they file for unemployment insurance. They file for unemployment insurance because they think I've been let go from my job, and they talk to the appropriate division, and that division says, oh yeah, no, you were not an appropriate independent contractor. You were an employee, definitely. Let's go to that farm and send him a bill. That's how you find out that you did it wrong. So it's not as if these things are entirely in your control. That's what risk really means when you're talking about independent contractor status. To present a second example, that person gets hurt, and they go to the workers' comp division, and the workers' comp division is like, what? The farm didn't register with us? They don't have a workers' comp policy? Oh, that is bad and wrong. And then you get a big fat fine. So it's these things can be outside of your control. And that's why you can look at this and be like, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I do provide the tools, but you know, they can show up whenever they want in the morning. That's risky. All right, so some examples for you. Let's say that we have Farmer May. Farmer May has an independent contractor. She works with the guy down the road. He's got an awesome combine. He just bought it. He loves to ride it around. So she works with him. She's like, hey, go harvest my soybeans. The guy down the road with the awesome combine, well, it's not just Farmer May's soybeans he harvests. He does custom harvests for folks all over. He makes money at the end of the season based on whether or not his combine breaks down and, you know, how efficient he is. He sets his own schedule. He might show up at 2 a.m. if that's the time in which he can get it done. Farmer May doesn't tell him how to do it. She doesn't tell him how to drive his combine and all that good stuff. At the end of the year, what Farmer May does is she sends him a Form 1099. The Form 1099 says, I paid you $3,000 to harvest my beans. Thanks. That, in all likelihood, is a totally legit independent contractor relationship. The guy's got his own combine, shows up when he can, does the work, drives the thing himself, and he's paid. He could even be paid by the acre or something like that. Like, the payment terms are flexible, but the bottom line is that's a profit to him based on how he runs his combine and how he schedules himself from amongst all of his neighbors. Let's say one year, Farmer May is the only one with a successful bean crop, and so she's the only one he's working for. That's not fatal, just because, you know, from a time or two, he's only working for Farmer May, you know? The state would probably let that go. Federal government would probably be like, you know, every once in a while, there's only one client. So don't get too wrapped up with the criteria. The Farmer May's situation with the custom harvest, totally legit. And so what Farmer May needs to know is, gosh, okay, I'm supposed to issue that 1099. Not a big problem. But for the most part, custom harvest is not how a lot of farmers are getting work done when they're thinking about employees. They're thinking about, well, I need someone to milk the cows. I need someone to, help sort my animals. I need someone to weed the spinach, to harvest, to do some deliveries, to run the honey processor. They need employees. That's not going to work. It's not going to work to be like, show up whenever you want to sort the animals. I'll just wander out of the house when you get here. It doesn't work to pay them by a flat fee. They don't bring their own tools, and they have to do it your way because it's your farm. That's generally what a producer is looking for. And in that case, they're looking for an employee. What is the definition of to employ someone, of an employee? We went through the definition of independent contractor. What's an employee? The federal definition of to employ a person is to permit someone, to allow someone to do the work of a for-profit business. If you have allowed or permitted someone to do the work of your farm, you have employed them. So kind of strange, because employee doesn't mean I made a job posting. I took applicants, I interviewed them, I hired them, and I processed a W-4. It means you let them work for you. So as you can imagine, this has some huge implications. You might be thinking to yourself, yeah, okay, but what about volunteers? Can we not have volunteers? Can we not have interns? Because I thought those people weren't employees. I thought those were alternative options for me to get work done on my farm. Let's talk about those alternative options. Okay, an intern. Intern or apprentice, for the purposes of employment law, is basically the same thing. An intern or apprentice needs to be, number one, involved in a formal educational program. That means also enrolled at a university, college, or other institute of official learning. This means that there needs to be a curriculum that is being followed, and curricula has milestones, tests to measure achievement of those things. This person, number two, needs to receive significant and broadly applicable educational benefit. This means they can't just be learning how you do it on your farm. They've got to be learning how you do it on many farms, in general, overall. Understanding the principles behind the decisions, the alternative ways to achieve this objective, that good stuff. And it needs to be significant. It needs to be the kind of knowledge that will actually help them in that endeavor, if they were to do that endeavor in the future. This is particularly relevant outside of the agricultural community, where we have, and these rules apply everywhere. These are not like farm intern rules. These are intern rules. This has been a particular problem in the movie industry. The movie industry has been hiring interns and not paying them anything for decades. And what they do is they have these people run to get coffee and, clean the trailers of the famous stars and all of that good stuff. And people take these jobs because proximity, they want to be close to these stars and get their toe in the door. So this is where a lot of that, no, you're not teaching people how to go get coffee or sweep the floor. This has to be significant. They have to be learning something about movie productions. Number three is the worst. Does not displace current employees. You might be thinking, well, no, of course, I'm not going to fire my employees and then go hire interns. If I got employees, I'm going to keep them. But that's not quite what this means. In a legal sense, to have displaced a current employee actually means if they didn't do the job, would you have to do it? Would someone have to do it? If nobody has to do it, then nobody's been displaced. Of course, that also means if nobody has to do it, why are you asking them to do it? You don't have someone around the farm so that they can do stuff you don't need done. But that's actually the point. If this person is doing stuff you need done, they're supposed to be an employee. The law does not want you to have interns. It wants interns to be an extremely narrow classification that you can only have if this is truly for the benefit of that individual and will really enhance their ability to, join the workforce as a farmer. If these criteria are not met, no panic, and you can even still call them an intern. You can have whatever job title you want. You just have to follow employment laws, because legally, they are also an employee. So, it's not about the job title. It's about the character and quality of what this individual is doing and what is the broader context that's going to make them an intern who is not also an employee. Yeah.
I just got a question. I think I know the answer, but I just want to ask about, like, if the farm was to receive an intern from the university.
Right.
That's not our intern, right? That's their managed by the university. And they're taking care of that side.
Great question. But be careful. Be careful. Legally speaking, there's a little something called joint liability. You are the one who is benefiting from that arrangement, primarily. Your business is the one that is benefiting from that arrangement, and 100% you could be responsible for all the employment laws. Very likely are responsible for compliance with all of those employment laws. It's a bit like saying just because someone sets you up to break the law doesn't mean you didn't break the law. And I know that sounds really harsh, and I'm not saying you're breaking the law. I'm saying you're taking a risk. You want to take these risks? That's yours to take, but don't think because someone else set you up to do it that it's not going to fall on you, because it very much will. And I have seen exactly that happen. There are a lot of entities out there that try to facilitate and assist in internship placements. And they may be recruiting folks from around the country to work on farms and unwittingly setting up the farmer for a terrible lawsuit and situation when things go wrong. And that does not go back to the person who placed them there. That's your relationship with that person who's doing work on your farm. So these can be really challenging criteria to meet. Most folks look at them and say, oh man, I don't know if that's a path my farm wants to go down. Other folks will look at this and say, yeah, that's the path my farm is going to go down. I'm in this for the education. I want those relationships. And my productivity, my profit is elsewhere. I've got another mechanism for making my money, and I can afford to retain people that aren't actually that useful. And it makes my life really valuable when I can teach them. If that's you, go for interns. I used to say, if the person working for you is really not like serving your business, you've got an intern. Okay, now you're saying, never mind, I won't do interns, I'll do volunteers. I'll just do volunteers, right? Or better yet, my spouse, my children. How about that? Okay, can you have volunteers? Can you have spouses, children, etc.? No. No. For-profit businesses are not eligible to have volunteers. It is that easy and that hard. So that's what the law says. Remember that definition of to employ someone to permit them to do the work of a for-profit business? It did not say, comma, as long as you're not related to them or you don't really, really like them. It's just if you let them do the work of your business. So that includes friends, that includes relatives, that includes children and spouses, technically. So what does this mean? It means anyone who you let do the work of your for-profit business is employed, and you need to follow employment laws. We all know we're not paying our spouse the minimum wage, and we all know that we're not doing that for our children. So how does this happen? It's because there's actually exceptions in the minimum wage laws that literally say, well, but okay, you don't have to pay your spouse the minimum wage. So legally, they are employed by the farm business if they are not an owner and they are doing its work. If they are not an owner and doing its work, they are employed. But you don't have to pay a minimum wage. Overtime rules don't actually apply. Neither does workers' comp, neither does discrimination. But legally, that's the way we need to understand it. So let's see how this plays out. Here's where the real disappointment comes in. Okay, we got Farmer January. Farmer January, She's got a CSA. Some customers volunteer packing boxes and doing marketing in exchange for product. It's a beautiful arrangement. I've been there. I love it. I hope that the farms that I work at don't actually listen to my presentations. The people who are packing boxes and doing marketing in exchange for product, what are they? Employees. Farmer August. Farmer August's nephew comes over after school for a few hours on weekdays. He's got a dairy operation. His brother used to help him out, but his brother's transitioning to a new career. He just needs a little bit of help. Just needs a little bit of help, and his nephew loves working with the cows. What's his nephew? An employee, right? All right, now I got some challenging ones. We got Farmer July. Farmer July runs a U-pick operation. She's got raspberries. This is in, pre-Drosophila times. She's got some raspberries, and folks come out, they pick them, they love it. They walk away with, pints full of raspberries. Farmer July is sitting in this presentation right now, and she is panicking. Oh my God, but wait, people are picking the raspberries. Are they all employees? Was I supposed to pay them for picking the raspberries? What do you think?
No.
I heard no. Tell me why.
The youth pickers are paying for a product that they took on their pay.
You're on the right track. You're totally on the right track. Your gut instincts are right on. You're right on. They are not employees. But if we're going to express that in a legal sense, it's because they're not doing the work of a U-pick farm. What is doing the work of a U-pick farm? Growing it. Taking people's money, advertising the business. If no one shows up to a U-pick farm, it's just a bad U-pick farm. So they're not going to be like, well, we have to harvest the raspberries. Sure, they could decide to harvest them. Like, okay, U-pick's failing, let's become a wholesaler. But that's a different matter. Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got a neighbor that does U-pick blueberries, and he does both U-pick and wholesale. How would you manage a situation like that?
Absolutely. If you advertised a U-pick opportunity, they came to U-pick, you sold a U-pick service, they're U-pick. Yep. And then the other thing is the other thing. Now, here's the problem. You come to have some U-pick people and you say, well, I'll give you a discount if you pick twice as much and you leave them with me. Oh boy, now I think they just did the work of a for-profit business, because now you're going to wholesale those. And harvesting of a product to be marketed wholesale is the work of that farm. So I had another. Yes, so the central question, is she permitting them to do the work of her for-profit business? I have one more challenge for you, because you guys did amazing on that one. We have, I've run out of months of the year. No, Farmer April. I don't think I did Farmer April. Farmer April, she runs a vegetable operation. She specializes in squash, pumpkins, and tomatoes. So all good fall crops. She wholesales them. She gets good money for it. She's really happy. She gets a call at the end of the season, and it's the local food bank. And they're like, do you still have tomatoes? I know you had a good year, but it's the very end. Do you still got some squash? Maybe something that got bit by a deer and you're just going to leave it in the field. Can we send out our gleaning crew to scoop that stuff up and bring it to the food bank or a processing kitchen where we make meals and give them to the needy, or insert other charitable venture here? What should Farmer April do? Or if people come out to her field to pick that stuff, are they employees?
Is she getting paid for it?
Excellent. Yeah, that's the question. Is she getting paid for that? If she's not, then that is not the work of her business. Yeah.
What if she gets compensated for the donation? Like, we're partnering with Farmers for the Money. So when we make donations to food shelves, get $1 per pound for the donation. So she's getting compensated, but she's not actually selling.
That is complicated. I see risk. I see a red flashing light. We did a presentation for the International Gleaning Conference in May, and it was all on those very complex issues because oftentimes gleaning is not straight gleaning. Gleaning is a combination of compensation plus other things getting tied into and it can get really complicated from a legal perspective. Is there risk? There is absolutely risk involved when there is compensation. Because it looks like the work of that business. Now, we'd have to look at the totality of the circumstances and say, well, look, they weren't buying my product, they were compensating me simply for my time in administering this volunteer endeavor. Would a judge buy it? Maybe they would if the facts show that the compensation was actually scaled to the amount of time spent to administer this charitable venture. Because that's allowed. Charities are allowed to give people stipends and reimburse them for direct expenses in performing said charitable venture,
I'm just curious where the risk of them, if there's a risk to that farmer being sued or something?
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Is that farmer gonna get in trouble?
See, you guys are primed. You are ready. Like, this information is going in and it's sticking, and I'm so confident you are going to be where you need to be. Yes, exactly. What is the risk? Number one, what's the most likely thing that happens to someone who comes on a farm who is not familiar with that operation? They get hurt. They get hurt. You're saying, well, what does that have to do? That has to do with the snowball of horrible things that happen once people get hurt. God forbid someone die. And it's like, well, who's going to die picking up a squash? Well, you never know. Things definitely happen. It's the most likely thing to happen. If that happens, people will be looking around and saying, what is going on here? And number one, we're going to be asking, where was the workers' comp policy? Because workers' comp is what makes an employee whole if they are injured on the job. And if there is no workers' comp, we start to think there's a lack of justice around here, and the state gets involved. So that's this. You go back to my number one risk management strategy: cover for injuries. If you can cover for injuries, you are stalling that snowball from spinning out of control.
So even if you had just like general liability coverage, a lawyer or whatever could dissect that a little bit and say that they were working at the time.
100%, that's exactly how it will happen. They will say this was employment. Mm-hmm.
I've got a decade in nonprofit operations, and I just want you to all consider that the folks you're partnering with won't understand any of this. And volunteers is the world. So when I show up with my volunteers, and because I'm the kind of person that's here 14 months in farming, I try to fix this from the other end. How do I provide conflict or protection for my volunteers? Thanks for your time. Sorry you got hurt, especially when I'm going to partner sites. I spent 5 years feeling like a woodpecker on the thin road. So don't assume that the people needing you understand what any of this, or that they have their volunteers covered in a meaningful or real way.
Right, right. And that's not to say, no one is doing this to be bad or to cause problems. Everyone's heart is in the right place. It's just that it doesn't always work out. It might work like one time out of 20, or I'm sorry, not work one time out of 20, but you don't want to be that 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 100 even. Mm-hmm. It varies. I'm gonna actually hold off on that one. I love your questions. We're getting a little far ahead, and I want to be sure that we catch some of my interim points here. Okay, central question, is she permitting them to do the work of a for-profit business? So not everything is off the table. You picked legit gleaning, legit charitable ventures for which you are not compensated, totally allowed. Actual educational ventures. But for the most part, this isn't going to work. Interns and volunteers are not going to work for a farm. Your worker shares, that stuff. Worker shares might work, but you're going to have to follow employment laws. So let's talk about what that means. I mean, heck, for that matter, volunteers might work as long as you're following employment laws. So how does that work? If we have an employee, we need to understand our employment law obligations. Let's emphasize minimum wage, overtime, and workers' comp, and we'll tack on in-kind wages at the end. Minimum wage in Wisconsin is $7.25 an hour. There is no exception for agricultural labor. $7.25 an hour, gotta pay it. Technically, the state of Wisconsin doesn't even exempt one's own children from that. That means that all of the 14-year-olds that are working on their parents' dairy farms technically could sue and say, I demand my $7.25 an hour. They're just not. I guess the lawyers haven't put those ads on TV at night and they haven't figured it out yet. There might be a spousal exemption, but I haven't looked at that because if anyone is actually going to sue their spouse for minimum wage, probably have other problems. So Minnesota is more complicated. I will say up front that the department, the state of Minnesota is not that forthcoming about the complexity of the actual situation in Minnesota. It's not necessarily in their interest to get into it. So this is the situation. So for small versus large employers, the minimum wage, let me see. I put in, now these numbers go up every January. So I don't think that I proactively put in the 2022 numbers. I believe I put in the 2021 numbers. So it's good for a few months. $10.08 an hour for your small, $10.33 an hour for your larger employees. But ag employers may except from that two specifically named individuals, as long as they are paid a salary and only perform agricultural labor. Okay, so that literally means, and I have called them to confirm this multiple times. I keep doing it as the years go by, just to be sure that they still give me the same answer. Two specifically named literally means I am not going to pay Jill and Joe minimum wage. Everybody else on my farm has to get paid minimum wage, but today, Jill and Joe do not. Now, I can only do that for Jill and Joe as long as they are paid a salary. And a salary, in quotes here, it is defined, and it means as long as I pay them the same amount every single week, no matter how much or how little work they do. So they're getting paid even when they are not working, like in the shoulder seasons. And only if they perform agricultural labor. What is agricultural labor? So this is a common theme throughout employment law. We've run into it already with minimum wage. Agricultural labor has a complicated definition. It is unclear in many instances, and that definition can change a bit between state or federal law. Generally speaking, consider anything that is not specifically the production and marketing of crops and livestock to be if it's not that, it's probably not agricultural labor. It's easier to say what is not agricultural labor. Agritourism, classes, workshops, value-added production. The state and federal government will also not commit to the idea that selling at the farmer's market is agricultural labor. The federal government will not say selling at the farmer's market is agricultural labor. Your risk-adverse person will thus assume selling at the farmer's market is not agricultural labor. Similarly, making CSA deliveries is not agricultural labor. Dropping food off at a restaurant buyer is not agricultural labor. And why? Is because agricultural labor is defined by the big guys. It's not defined by the direct market sellers. And for the march of the past 70 years in agriculture, farming means selling wholesale. It does not mean selling direct to consumer. So the case law and all that good stuff hasn't necessarily caught up with the idea that a lot of people are doing direct market. But at the same time, even if the law caught up with what farmers are really doing, that isn't to say that if we had a discourse about what justice requires and what we want as an agricultural community, that we would say, no, those people don't get minimum wage. If we had a discussion about that, society may still say direct market producers, not agricultural labor, pay at least the minimum wage. Hard to say. So there is a small print unless down here, unless the farm crosses the 500 man-day threshold, and then they do have to pay at least the federal minimum wage to those 2 salaried employees. It's complicated. In many instances where you don't want to mess with the complications, just pay at least the minimum wage and you could sleep better at night. The good thing, I suppose, about minimum wage law is that the minimum wage is so low, you're going to be hard-pressed to find an employee on the market who will work for that. So this really only becomes relevant if you're saying, I have a legit, no, let me back up. This is only relevant if you're saying, I have an intern program, but it doesn't meet the criteria. Do I have to pay the minimum wage? If you only have 2 interns, no, you still don't have to pay them the minimum wage. Sure, we've said, yeah, they're employees. They don't meet that criteria. I'm not working with the university. I would have to do their work if they weren't there. So sure, they're employees, but I still don't have to pay the minimum wage in the state of Minnesota. If you're in Wisconsin, you're like, well, I do. It's a mere $7.25 an hour. So it's not a death knell to say, oh, I do have employees. Yeah.
What's a mandate?
Yeah. Okay, a man-day, great question. Some states still use the man-day, and others have tried to get around it with like agricultural labor day or something like that. It is a day in which, rephrase again. Anytime one worker shows up for at least 1 hour of work, you have 1 man-day. If 2 people show up for at least 1 hour of work, you have 2 man-days.
So is that essentially saying if you have more than 500 employees?
No. This is, right, this is a complicated, yeah. If this matters to you, you've got to read our detailed material on how to track man-days. It is not easy, and when I say 500 man-day threshold, it's actually in any calendar quarter of the current or previous year. So it's not 500 man-days overall, it is over this or the previous year. The easiest way to grasp it is, let me just tell you, that's anywhere between 6 and 8 full-time employees. If you're between 6 and 8 full-time employees, you are hovering around this 500 man-day threshold. Yeah. But they have to make it way more complicated than that, of course. Let's talk overtime. In Wisconsin, overtime is not owed, so long as you are only assigning agricultural labor. If you're a direct market producer, this is really going to cause you some consternation. A lot of direct market producers assign overtime. Their employees in the summer work 50, 55, 60 hours a week. If they are also the CSA style, if they're also going to farmers markets, they are at risk. If they are doing agritourism and assigning those employees to perform this kind of labor, they are at risk of needing to pay overtime, time and a half, for all hours worked over 40 in that week under federal law. This is actually the biggest risk that I see happen on farms across the United States. This is federal law. This particularly happens when farms diversify. Hey, you know, the wholesale pumpkin and tomato thing isn't quite paying the bills. I'm going to do a pizza farm. That's great, but if you're used to following the farm rules and maybe not paying minimum wage and not paying overtime, and then you start a pizza farm and you use your same employees for production as for pizza, regular rules apply. Overtime, minimum wage, all that good stuff. No more agricultural exemption once you diversify. Once you go into value added, once you start offering educational opportunities and on-farm processing or whatever the case may be. So you got to watch out for diversification if you are taking advantage of any exemptions from regular old employment law. You're not a farm anymore once you do those things. Now you can split tasks. You can say, well, I will never use the same employees for my production as for my value added. That's cool. You can do that. And then you are preserving the agricultural exemption for those that only do agriculture. So you got to hire people specifically for the value added, specifically for the pizza farm. Or make your spouse and children do it. Yeah.
Oh, just a quick question. I got a friend that works at the same dairy farm that I was mentioning before, and she does a lot of value-added stuff and has been salaried, over the course of the year. So we kind of tax her hours in the wintertime and then in the summertime she works overtime. What are the laws around the salary, salaried employee that does both farm and non-farm income, or non-farm work?
Great question.
Income throughout the whole year?
Great question. If we're mixing agricultural and non-agricultural work, we got to follow non-agricultural rules. Non-agricultural rules say overtime after 40 hours. What about the salary? Now, that's exactly why the salary exists. It exists to avoid overtime where it is otherwise owed. A person is eligible for that under two broad circumstances. And don't go back to don't go to the bank on what I'm about to say, because there's more precision than I'm able to relay right now. Number one, managerial position. It has to be a managerial position where they have authority for decision making. Ideally, that is represented by them supervising other people, but it's not fatal if they don't supervise. It's just really better if they do.
This is the criteria for salary.
This is a criteria for a salary that is given for the purposes of avoiding the payment of overtime. Yeah. The second element is that they have to make at least, I believe it's like $38,000 per year. And that threshold is current, but it is subject to change. The Obama administration tried to move that up to $53,000, I think it was, $53,000, which would have eliminated actually a lot of positions that are using salary to avoid overtime. And that lasted for a few months before it got kicked out. And the Trump administration didn't do it, and I haven't seen from the Biden administration that they're going to do it, but it's talked about that threshold is very low.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
This may be me just overthinking it.
Probably not.
Let's say I have an employee and they work 38 hours. That's what they typically work in a week. And I'm sending involved in labor, but then I ask them, hey, I'm not feeling well, can you go work the farmer's market for me? And that puts them from 38 to a total of 45 hours.
Right.
So, why don't we hold them to that 5 hours overtime, because that puts them over 40 hours in paid labor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Technically, in that situation, if you are risk adverse and you are striving to comply in the face of uncertainty, you are paying them overtime for that 5 hours over.
So I don't, yeah, that doesn't make, I got it.
The next question is, well, but it was a Wednesday farmer's market, so technically those 5 hours over were in the field. That doesn't matter. It is any hours over 40. Think of it this way. Non-agricultural labor infects the entire work week. As soon as that is performed, the exemption is gone. For whatever overage there is, overtime is owed. There's a trend nationwide to eliminate the agricultural exemption for overtime. Minnesota has already complicated matters significantly. The state of Washington, their Supreme Court just threw out their agricultural exemption for overtime. We will see more of this happen. Colorado just did away with theirs. So folks that have their ear to the ground and are thinking about long-term business planning for agricultural operations will be thinking about overtime, time and a half, and how to make that part of the business plan.
If you pay someone a different wage for the different assignments that they're doing, so they get one wage when they're doing agricultural work, and a different wage when they're doing non-agricultural work, does overtime still apply?
It does, yes. And there are complicated rules for exactly what time and a half means when they may work in two different positions paid at two different rates. There is a rule for how to do that. Oh, I don't actually know it because it doesn't happen very often on farms, but I could point you in the right direction. Yeah. So anyways, Minnesota overtime is complicated. It's owed for hours over 48 in a week. Now, none of this matters if you're assigning non-agricultural labor. It's just all hours over 40. This is just agricultural labor. Then it's still owed at 40, over 48 in a week unless they're receiving this salary. Salary means you pay them whether they work or not. And it also seems to allow you to select 2 persons to exclude from overtime. Those poor 2 people, right? Let's talk workers' compensation. Okay, when do you have to have it? In Minnesota, oh, I'm sorry, I switched these. It should always be Wisconsin on top, so you're not confused. Oh, well. Wisconsin, it's mandatory after the farm has 6 or more employees on 20 consecutive days in a calendar year. In Minnesota, it's mandatory after payroll hits 8,000. Now, I'm giving you some quick statements. There's actually a lot more behind this potentially. I suggest strongly going to our website, downloading. Oh, I sent those along. I actually provided y'all with the detailed guide that we have for Minnesota and Wisconsin. So back this stuff up there. I want to tell you a little bit more about workers' compensation. Most folks think workers' compensation is an employee benefit, and that maybe it was the unions, or maybe it was, farm worker advocacy groups or something or other that got us workers' comp. It is not. Workers' compensation was and is designed to protect the employer. It is designed to protect the business. It is not designed to protect the employee. The reason workers' comp was instated is because prior to workers' compensation, injured employees did what any injured individual does. They sued their employer. They sued their employer and said, this accident never should have happened to me. So-and-so was poorly trained. This thing was put in the wrong place. I was pushed. There's all these reasons why this injury never should have happened, and this employer needs to pay for that bad thing happening to me. Folks got fed up with that. Employers got fed up with that. They got fed up with the unpredictability of the lawsuits. They got fed up with the really large judgments that would come down that would put them out of business. And they said, state, solve it. And the state said, okay, here's a workers' compensation program. Under workers' compensation, employees can't sue their employer when they're injured. Basically, no matter what happened, no matter, whether the equipment was unsafe or you were not properly trained or someone, did this to you, if workers' compensation covers that injury, they cannot sue. So it actually protects the employer by helping them manage costs, avoid those judgments, and all they got to do is pay the premium. And the premium is set by law. The premium is set by law based on how frequently injuries occur in said industry. So that's the system that we have. It is actually there to protect you as the farm business owner. If you are not required to have workers' compensation, which is more likely if you're in Wisconsin, honestly. If you're in Minnesota and you do employ, you're probably paying workers' comp. But in Wisconsin, this is a pretty big exception. If you don't have it and someone gets injured on your farm, they're going to sue you. So you got to have insurance for that. Lord knows you don't want to actually handle that kind of lawsuit yourself or hire your own attorney to defend you. You need to have insurance. Insurance for injury to workers is actually very hard to buy. That's because most folks don't need it. Most folks have to go into workers' comp. This is an agricultural exemption. Every non-agricultural business in Wisconsin has to buy workers' comp. So there's no market for those who need a general liability policy that covers workers. Only these small farms need it. So they're going to pay for it, probably pay dearly. So if you have a straight liability policy and you want coverage for your employees because you are not in the workers' comp program, you need to talk to your insurance agent and say, I need liability coverage for my employees. You got to get some quotes, see what that's going to cost you, and then buy that product. It's very worthwhile to just look at what workers' comp is going to cost you. Do some cost comparisons. If it's not that much more expensive and you know you'll never get sued, it might be worth it to buy the workers' comp anyways. To get you that peace of mind and that predictable, this is just what it's going to cost by law. So it can be a good deal. Now, what does it cost? That absolutely varies by the quality of work that you're assigning to your employees. And it also depends on the state. I have seen some success in Minnesota The lowest rates generally go to those that only assigned hand labor who do not use machinery, no tractors, no PTO units, no chainsaws, no ladders. If you can eliminate that stuff, you can go for the lowest risk qualification. You also need to be sure that your workers' comp or insurance agent understands that you are not, there's no tractor work, there is no chainsaws, there is no ladders. You have to be thorough about explaining that. In general, expect to pay between $600 and $1,200, not $1,200, $1,200 for, just a small farm. Per year, yeah. And that's like 2 employees, that's small. It does, yes. Yeah, cabbage doesn't kick.
So you can elect workers' comp without the need.
You can elect workers' comp even if you don't have to buy it, exactly. Exactly. Now, you can also elect to cover yourself with workers' comp. This wasn't the point of my presentation, but I'll sneak it in there. Is lunch at noon? Yeah, okay. Not sure how much I should be sneaking in here. I have a few more slides to go. But anyways, you can elect to cover yourself. Why would you do that? Because your personal health insurance policy may not cover you for injuries incurred in the course of self-employment. Most farmers do not know that their insurance company, who they might have through their spouse who has off-farm employment, might not cover them if the hospital finds out that injury was suffered in the course of self-employment. Yeah.
I own a small business in a completely different sector and had federal comp, of course, and an option was for me to buy workers' comp for myself as the owner, the lost wages, or if I got injured.
Yeah.
But it significantly increased our premium.
Yeah,
Is that the same, have you seen that?
absolutely. Right, definitely. Definitely. It comes down to getting a lot of different quotes. You really got to shop around. I know that that's a huge time suck. It is not fun, but think of it as a tremendous investment in your long-term resilience. If you can figure out how you're going to stay healthy and well and keep, a potential disability from keeping you from doing your work, you're taking tremendous steps to farm for the long term. Okay, so our key knowledge point that we have discussed. Farms lose exemptions from minimum wage and overtime when they assign non-agricultural labor. We already discussed agricultural labor. If you are playing it safe, you are assuming agritourism, value-added production, food service, and even direct market sales are not agricultural labor. If you don't mind living on the edge, sure, you have a point that direct market sales should be agricultural labor, but you're going to have to make that point. My break to prioritize, we've kind of bundled this into your questions already. The risk of injury is high. If you are focusing on addressing the risks that are most likely to happen and will be the most detrimental if they do happen, you are covering the risk of injury. So if you have limited resources and limited time and energy, focus here. Start looking at workers' comp, even if you're not required to have it. Call your liability insurance company, figure out what they would charge you to cover your employees. We also covered workers' comp and explained this is what protects employers from lawsuits, and it may be required, especially in the state of Minnesota, for farm labor. Those in Wisconsin might want to buy it anyways. So that's why our number one action point is to get workers' comp, or if you don't have to, at least liability injury coverage to make sure the workers on your farm are covered in case of injury. Let me go back to our worker shares. So I did the big reveal. Worker shares are legally employees. So what does that mean? You got to follow employment laws. Well, let's walk through it. Number one, minimum wage. They got to receive the value of $7.25 in the state of Wisconsin or 10-something odd in the state of Minnesota. You might already be doing that. I mean, what's the value of the CSA averaged, divided across the number of hours worked for it? I did the math years ago and I was like, well, that's not bad. That's kind of like minimum wage. So A farmer who is managing his or her risk in this way would just make sure that the hourly equivalent for wages, of wage received equals at least the minimum wage. And then we can check that one off our list. I'm going to put a pin in a little bit extra, but then we have to talk overtime. So just a second, we got our worker share. We've checked the box on minimum wage. Well, we're going to check the box on overtime. It's like, well, they're only here 4 hours a week. I do not have to worry about overtime. What about workers' comp? We literally call up our workers' comp agent and say, I know this is weird. I've got some worker shares. I know you've never heard that term before. They're people who work on my farm in exchange for produce. It is legal, I swear to you, it's legal, and I want coverage for them. Here is the value of what they receive. No, I can't give you a W-2 because I'm not issuing one, but please, 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 I need coverage for these people. This is the value. And you keep working on them until they issue a workers' comp policy for you that covers your worker shares. And then you've checked that box off, and it's not that horrible. Even though they're employees, you can manage to comply with the laws that then fall to that worker share. And then if they are injured on your farm, or God forbid they die, you don't have to worry quite as much, aside from the fact that they died. So you can, your legal risk is more minimized. Now, but to touch a little bit more on this scenario, in-kind wages are actually quite complex. They are wages. So technically, the IRS is going to be like, where's the W-2? They are owed the W-2. It should say the value of that share that was received. So, the share's $900. It's like, there's $900 of income. Of course, we issue W-2s as part of signaling to the IRS that we have met our payroll obligations, that we have contributed also to these individuals' Social Security accounts, we have paid our FICA, whatever that may be due. So yes, legally speaking, the IRS wants their cut of the zucchini that was provided.
We can mail that.
Exactly. They do have a sign on the door that says cash only. So you, technically, if you are complying with these laws, you are remitting to the IRS cash in the value of your obligations for the zucchini provided. I know many a farm that's like, yeah, I'm cool with that risk. Let them come. That is for you to decide. You know that they can come, and they can get that portion of those wages. But when we're talking about risk, how likely is it that something bad will happen? How horrible is it if it does happen? How likely is it that the IRS finds out that you're handing out zucchini in exchange for work? And how bad will it be? Just pay the back taxes. That's not like $100,000 because someone died and now you're hit with penalties for not having workers' comp, let alone the costs of caring for that person who was injured. So I'm not saying don't comply with IRS rules, especially since we have a recording running. I'm not saying that. I'm saying knowing the rules is your responsibility and deciding what to do about them is your job. Action step number 2, modify your business plan to account for employment law obligations. Oh, we would all sleep at night if you could do that, and I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is, as Paul was just explaining, to keep your labor costs low. But every year, keep this in mind, every year strive towards being able to do this and even being able to pay overtime, because that day might come sooner in Minnesota than anywhere else. Well, yeah, Minnesota's kind of up next. So, to the extent you can. And if you want those intern classifications, do some work and make sure you are comfortable with the risk that you are taking on. All right, I've got a few minutes left. I'm happy to take questions, but I'm also really interested in where you see the greatest opportunity to create legal resilience in employment law on your operation or your future planned operation. So would love to hear your stories for until lunchtime and, of course, questions. First up, if you don't mind, if I ask this fellow if I covered what you were thinking of within kind wages.
Kind of.
Right. Right. It is complicated. You need a copy of our Guide to In-Kind Wages. There are 3 different factors that you need to assess. Number 1, there are state statutes that apply that describe exactly how much you can charge for that. So Wisconsin, for example, has a very specific table. This is what you can charge for room, this is what you can charge for board, no more than this. Minnesota actually has statutes that say, if you're going to do this, you must provide at least these, they define what the meal has to be. And I love this part, it requires that you provide either coffee or tea at every meal. So, Wisconsin for some reason doesn't require milk. But you've got to make sure that you are meeting your statutory requirements for the components of that meal and not exceeding the threshold. But then federal law also says you cannot exceed your own cost in providing that. Basically, you cannot make a profit on the provision of labor and food to these folks. So if this is product that's coming out of your own field, if this is a spare room in your house, what truly is the cost to you of providing it? So that can be a very careful decision that I would suggest you make in connection with your accountant. That's risky. Kinda? Yeah, oh yeah, if you're deducting from their pay, like there's a whole nother set of rules about when and for what you can actually deduct from pay. It is honestly a lot easier to structure this as a lease-based arrangement. It is completely separate. It is not connected to employment. And then that's, yeah, there are less rules that relate to that. You need to talk to an accountant. Yeah, because it's going to vary depending on exactly what, yeah. An accountant is definitely your friend for the kind of scenario you're talking about. Yeah.
One good one, I think we can all benefit from this. Okay, if we can't hire you, who do we hire? And is there like any kind of like, because we can bring that scenario to a lawyer, is that kind of like a one-time deal to help set up that structure so that we understand, or like, is there, what's the kind of general cost? 'Cause I don't want to do this wrong.
Yeah, I do not have good news for you.
Okay, not a specific individual, but we're looking for a
Right.
business lawyer. If we were
Right.
looking for someone to help with this, or like,
Right. As for people that know farm employment law in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, there are very, very few, especially that understand direct-to-consumer farms. This is why Farm Commons exists. I wouldn't do this if you could just go hire an attorney to do it. We do it because there's a huge need for this. I don't know of another attorney that has done the level of research that Farm Commons has to understand the ins and outs of farm employment law. Certainly, Farmers Legal Action Group or FLAG, they're folks. But again, you can't hire them, just like you can't hire us. So is there a practicing attorney that knows this stuff and can efficiently tell you and help you quickly understand? No. And because there's not, you can pay them for their self-education. But it's going to take them hours and hours and hours to learn this stuff, and they're probably going to bill you $200 an hour at least for that. You'll get there. You'll get there if you have a spare few thousand lying around, but for most farmers, that's not really an option. Now, if you do have a legal budget and you want to invest in that relationship, it would be amazing, and every other farmer would thank you for investing in that relationship, because then they too would have someone to go to. But in the short term, we don't have an answer. And I'm not up here to sell membership, but I am up here to sell membership. You can always join Farm Commons. We've got the information there for you. It is cheap, $99 for a year. That's like 15 minutes with an attorney. So you can get really far, and you can make decisions for yourself. You can figure a lot of this out. Sure, when it comes down to things like this fellow's situation with accounting, you can find an accountant who can help you. An accountant who understands farm business is a lot easier than finding an attorney who really understands this. So invest in that relationship with the accountant. You can get citations from our material. You can go to the source. You can bring it to an accountant and say, I need some help with this. And that stuff is familiar to them. They do have the skills to do that. So a lot of times, I hate to say it, your better bet is the accountant when this relates to taxes and those sorts of things. So it is in Farm Commons' long-term mission to make sure that we can build a base of attorneys that are qualified and are able to address your questions in an affordable manner. But it is hard. It is actually way easier for Farm Commons to just write the stuff and tell y'all than it is for us to address the business model that is legal services. These attorneys aren't out there because they can't make money serving you, because you can't pay, because there's not enough of you, and because honestly, their student loan debt is so high that they have got to make money. Unless you work for a nonprofit like me, and you're going to get it forgiven in 10 years. The federal law that allows me to get my student loans forgiven is the only reason I can actually be here doing this. So there's a lot of factors at play into why we're in the situation that we're in.
You don't have any recommendations on Minnesota, Wisconsin, or various or for consultants that are familiar with farm law that you recommend?
We always say ask your peers in your local area, because if you're in like Farmington versus Duluth, I mean, accountants are highly local.
Well, I'm the dot on the top of the map in Wisconsin where there's nobody else around.
Nice, nice. Awesome. And of course, if you are a Farm Commons member, we have referral boards on our Q&A platform, so you can go there to look for referrals. If we got into the referral business, we would actually hazard our 501c3 status, so we can't do that. But we can help you do that for each other.
Do you know, maybe like, an example, like policy libraries that you would have, like for like safety procedures or common from a small scale farm? Or do you see some like kind of possibilities like farmers that are able to crowdsource funding for you all to research that?
That's a great question. And generally, when people have questions about safety in their operations, they go two places. They go to their workers' comp provider. That's the person who pays when someone is injured. So they actually have the greatest interest in making sure that an operation is safe. So a workers' comp provider can usually provide manuals, training, they'll do workshops, all that kind of stuff to promote safety. Farmers are in a bum situation because, especially in Wisconsin, they don't have to buy it. So again, there's not a market for serving this audience with the information that they need. You can also go to OSHA. OSHA is not actually enforceable against any farm with 10 or fewer employees. So again, there is not a robust knowledge base at OSHA about how the small farm operates and what their rules are. I feel really bad. I feel like this is the same answer to that question. There's not a lot that can really help us. And boy, would I love some money to be able to, to work on those issues. But I also see as an organization that there are other players that have this knowledge and they're not giving it to us. And they should. And we also need to lean on those forces, you know. And some of that is participating in the market a little better, you know, saying, no, I will buy the workers' comp even though I don't have to, or I will talk to OSHA even though I'm not required to comply.
Just some clarification, Wisconsin workers' comp mandatory upper bar has 6 or more employees. Okay, I get that. On 20 consecutive days?
Right.
Is that like, Sunday, like, is that like never taking a day off? Or is it 20 consecutive days?
Good point. No, you can take, the weekends are off. It is more detailed, again, than I have laid out in there, because you don't have to buy workers' comp on the 21st day. You have like 10 days in which to buy the policy, and there is more to it. That is designed to help you get a foothold into whether this is your issue or not. We have more detailed guides that will go into more depth.
I thought that my farm, I have 2 business partners that one of them handles more of that side of things. I just now asked her if we've been paying workers' comp. She said no. And I, for some reason, assumed that we were this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk with a workers' compensation agent. And in the state of Wisconsin, that's any agent, any insurance agent you've got. Yep, and they should be able to give you more direction. But I should wrap it up. It looks like it is lunchtime. I'm here through lunch. If anyone wants more questions in between bites of my food.
Oh, no.